Hello, this video is an overview of Module 1. To follow along, you should look in the Module section of Blackboard and see the details of what I'll be talking about. There are basically 6 different parts you'll be working on for this module. First up, learn how this course will work, introduce yourself on Blackboard, and learn about the My Reflection assignment. Second, get an overview of this module and some content and design tips by watching a video. Third, get familiar with Adobe Muse by following some tutorial videos and creating a sample website. Fourth, look at some websites, templates, and widgets to get inspired. Fifth, watch some additional tutorials to go more in depth with Muse. And then sixth, your project. Create your own website for a client with at least 4 pages of internal content, a header and a footer, and at least 3 widgets or added features. For that project, you're going to submit a draft by the end of the first week and then comment on 3 other drafts. And then you're going to submit your final completed project to Blackboard along with development thoughts and/or questions by the end of the second week. After that, you'll comment on at least 3 other finished projects. So let's go through these goals, starting with the first part, learning about this course and introducing yourself. If you haven't seen it already, make sure that you watch the welcome video from me. It's in the course resources section if you want to browse for it, or you can just click the link in Module 1 and you should be brought right there. It has a bunch of overview information about the course in general. Then you should introduce yourself on Blackboard and check out the My Reflection directions. The second part is to watch this video for Module 1 and some content and design tips. So if you're watching this now, then it's safe to say you're on track for that. Okay, moving right along to part 3. Get familiar with Adobe Muse by watching some tutorial videos and creating a sample website called Katie's Cafe. After making sure that your software is up to date, you should follow the link in the module to check out the short tutorial to create the Katie's Cafe sample website. Basically, you will download a few sample files and then follow along with the tutorial videos in order to create your own Katie's Cafe site on your own computer using Adobe Muse. It should probably take less than an hour, but I think it will be really useful to get a sense of what Muse is all about and get some of the basic features and the steps. You don't need to submit the finished Katie's Cafe site, it's just for your own learning, but do follow along since it's a great way to get started. Next, you should check out the links in the module to look at some websites, templates, and widgets to get inspired for your own creation. You don't need to explore them in depth, but just get a sense for what you like and what you can do with Muse. As a warning, you can use these templates for inspiration and base your design conceptually on one or more of them, but do not actually use any of these templates for this assignment. So don't download a template and then build off of it. That's not what we're going for here. You can do that in the future, of course. I often do that with clients, but for this class, the templates are there just for ideas and inspiration only. I want to see what you can create from scratch. Next up, you should head over to lynda.com and check out some tutorial videos about Muse. The Katie's Cafe exercise is a great way to get going quickly, but it really only skims the surface. So now you can go in depth with some more of the features of the software. Downloading the sample files and following along is optional. I'll leave that up to you if you think it will be beneficial for you or not, but I would recommend going through these videos as needed in order to get a good foundation in the software. As a disclaimer, I don't want you to feel burdened by these tutorials and feel that you have to go through every single one of them and know everything that they are going to cover. Some of the tutorials will be more relevant than others, depending on what you'll be creating. But there's lots of good info in there, and I would encourage you to explore a bit at a pace and the depth that works for you. You also don't have to watch all of the tutorials before starting your project. You're welcome to start your project and then go back and reference these videos as needed. So now on to the project itself. You will be creating your own website for a client with at least 4 pages of internal content, including text and images and so forth. It's going to have a header and a footer with appropriate info and links in those, and at least 3 widgets or added features. To start, you have to find a client. What I want you to do is essentially pick a small business maybe, or a good cause, maybe something that you care about, or just something that maybe has popped into your mind, and create a website for it. For example, a local farmer's market, a church or a synagogue or a mosque, a cafe or a restaurant, maybe a local hardware store or a florist, or a nonprofit that you believe in, an animal shelter, or a family member's budding craft or baked goods side project. Maybe a local musician, or maybe something educational like a museum or a historical site. that's local to you. Now, if the thought of talking to an actual client is a little imposing or just something you're not interested in, you can also create a mock site or a fake organization if you like, as long as you do it convincingly and in a well thought out manner. Your own business is okay if you happen to have a real business idea that doesn't currently have a site, or you want to start your own business, but I would ask that you don't do a portfolio site yet. You could do that possibly for the final project if you want. But for this one, I want you to try, if possible, to think of someone else that you can make this site for, since it's really good practice to think about the needs of a client rather than your own. So think of a few different clients that you might be able to create a site for, and perhaps narrow it down based on how easy it will be to get materials and photos and content and so forth. A few things to keep in mind if you will actually talk to someone out in the real world. Of course, be sure to always be professional, and I would establish right up front with them that this is just a class project at the moment. You should definitely not expect or negotiate any sort of payment for this, and they actually shouldn't even expect to see the finished product unless you really want to show it to them. Tell them to think of it more like you're doing a website inspired by them for practice for the class, but it's not actually for them. You also should not, I repeat, not publish this live on the web, since it might cause problems if the client already has a website or you happen to get some information wrong or something. If someone does a Google search for the company and they wind up at your site instead of the real one, that would be a problem. So if you need to post it temporarily on the web for testing, of course that's understandable, but just make absolutely sure that you take it down afterwards, certainly after the class is over. So let's keep this as a class exercise for now. But of course, after this class is over, you can certainly talk to the client about fleshing it out and posting it live on the web if you'd like. That's up to you, and of course I want you to have the confidence and the skills to do that. Once you've selected your client, you need to think about content. Of course, a good starting point is to think about the different pages that you will have. You will need at least 4 of them, with each one having text and images and appropriate content. For example, you could have pages for home and about, gallery, menu, tour schedule, history, contact, directions. These are all good page ideas. But let's take a step back for a moment and think about why this client needs a website in the first place. What is the actual reason that this entity exists in the first place? And what are you actually trying to achieve by having this site visible to the world on their behalf? To answer that question, it's different for different clients. For example, we could look at, say, a local pizza place and assume that most likely they want to attract more customers and sell more pizzas. If we have a local musician as our client, they might be interested in getting more people to come out to their shows, maybe attracting a record label, or maybe they simply want to share their story or their vision to inspire others. An animal shelter might want to find permanent homes for the animals that they have in their care, or maybe help others to care for their own pets properly. So once you've figured out the goal of the entity and what it is that they want and what they hope to achieve, then you can start to think about the target audience. Who is this site for, and what does the client actually want them to do after visiting the site? Like, what's the ideal? Knowing the answers to these questions will help greatly when you're trying to determine what information should and shouldn't go onto the site. For example, with the pizza place, we could think about their target audience, and it's pretty easy to determine geographically. They're probably interested in attracting customers from their own town and perhaps the surrounding area. But we could even think a bit further about repeat customers versus new customers and how these two groups might be different, and how you might make the site a little different if you were to focus on each one of them. New customers, for example, might not know anything at all about the place. They need an overview. They need to know why they should go to this pizza place instead of another one. They need to know what the offerings are, the hours and the directions. And they probably want to see some unbiased reviews from a source like Yelp. What if they're vegetarian, or they have a gluten allergy, or they're looking for something new and exciting? Is it expensive? Do they deliver? They might not even know what the place looks like, or where to park, or which door to use. These are all things that you should think about for this particular target audience. And each of these considerations should have a matching solution on the site. For example, to answer the question of location and parking, we could show a map and a photo of the main entrance and offer driving directions. To lure them away from another pizza place, we might add a quote from a past customer saying, "This is the best pizza in the state, hands down." Think about what would get you to go to a particular place for the first time. So try to put yourself in the shoes of the target audience. Repeat customers, on the other hand, are slightly different. They probably know most of the basics since they've been there already, and they probably have a different motivation for visiting the site. They might be interested more in food specials or upcoming events, like maybe a trivia night or a pizza tossing competition or something. They might want coupons that would steer them to this particular pizza place on a certain night. They might want bonus info, like what sorts of beers go well with each kind of pizza, or maybe news about the family that owns it. We could also think about what a food critic or a reviewer might want to see on the site. So these different target audiences will help us to hone our content and think about what should really go on there. And we also need to think about priority. For example, I would probably bias the content of this site towards the new customers since they are the primary target audience. The repeat customers aren't quite as much of the focus since hopefully they've been there before and the food and the atmosphere will speak for itself. And they know how to get there and so forth. So once you've thought about your pages and the content and the target audience, you can start to think about the design, and all the good things that you've hopefully already picked up in the prereq design course can now get applied. And it's with the design of the site that you can give the site some character and a certain look and a feel that's appropriate for the content. And not only that, the design of the site can also help us to think about how best to deliver the content and help answer some of those questions that we brought up. For example, our problem of new customers not knowing what our pizza place looks like, well, right on the main page, I would probably put a nice, large, friendly photo of the building so that a new customer can spot it easily. And I would also put probably that quote up about it being the best pizza in Connecticut, since that might help them to take the plunge and to give it a try. And if that's all they see before leaving the website, they see the building, they see the name and an attractive quote, well then the site has still accomplished something. But of course the real success is if you can get them to come out and to go through that front door. I'd also recommend making critical information available on every page. Don't make the visitor hunt for the address or the phone number or the hours. Put that right in the footer or the header so that no matter where they are in the site, they can always get to that information. I would also recommend keeping that sort of information as plain text. Although you might be tempted to get fancy in Photoshop with the address or the phone number, it also means that a search engine like Google can't read it directly. If you really want to make something important in graphical format, you can do that, but just repeat that information elsewhere with plain text, or at least look into some of the SEO techniques like alt text in order to make the site more optimized for search, which is certainly important for getting people to find the site to begin with. Now, as far as the overall design, what the entire site looks like on the whole, the client might have some ideas about colors and layout and such, and normally you should be very open to what they have to say. This is, after all, their business, and they probably have a good sense about what it represents to them. But you as a designer should also have a sense for what works for their site and for their goals. For example, a pizza place should probably avoid a website that has like a high-tech look with a black background, gray text, and electric blue accents. Looking at a site like that really doesn't make anyone feel hungry or give off like the homey vibe that we might be shooting for. Instead, I would start by taking perhaps some photos of the actual business, of the establishment. What colors and designs did they pick, and what do they like? What matches the actual experience that a customer will have when they go there? And don't just think about colors, think about textures too. Maybe take some close-up shots of things like the stonework, or maybe the dark hardwood floors, or the brick oven, or the coal that they use, or the food, of course. These sorts of things can make for great backgrounds or small accents. Just keep them subtle most of the time. For example, you could drop the alpha level of a strong graphic in order to wash it out, so it's more of a hint of a design element rather than an overpowering eyesore. Now, using the actual establishment as a model often works, but doesn't always work. For example, some places might be in desperate need of a makeover, and I wouldn't want you to put 1970s fake brick and worn brass fixtures into your nice new website. So instead, I would think about the ideal. Maybe look at some photos of Tuscan villas in Italy, or even think about appealing food colors, browns and tans and reds and whites, maybe greens. Maybe your site can inspire them for a new look for the actual place. Then I would suggest searching and looking for other restaurant sites that you might like. What works and what doesn't? Then look at those website and template examples in the module to get some ideas for the entire site design. Should it be sleek and classy or friendly and fun? Again, think about who you're trying to attract, the target audience, and what you want to get across to them. What do you think? What do you want them to feel, and what do you want them to do? Those are the important questions. Often I'll pick a handful of templates online and then send them to the client so that they can pick one or two that they like, and I can get a sense of what they're thinking. Sometimes I'll create a custom site from scratch that is similar in some ways, and other times we'll actually just purchase the template and use that as a starting point. But for this assignment, I would not recommend spending any time working with the client on design choices. You get to call the shots on this one, so pick a design direction that you like and that you think is suitable. And keep in mind that you shouldn't actually download and use any of the templates, but instead you could use them for design inspiration and direction. I expect you to make this particular site from scratch. So I hope these content and design tips are useful for you as you go to create your own site. Once you have the main content and design set, you'll need to pick at least 3 widgets or features to incorporate in the site. That's one of the requirements of this project. Once you dive into Muse, you'll see what widgets are all about, but basically they're pre-made components that can give you some advanced functionality very quickly. For example, there are some photo viewer widgets that would be great to show off some of the food menu items, or a slideshow widget to scroll through customer quotes. There are also things like Google Map integration, contact forms, scroll effects and animations, social media links, YouTube video pop-ups, etc. And these are a way that you could take your site to the next level, and you'll need to include at least 3 of them in addition to the menu navigation widget. Try some of them out and then think about what would be a good fit for your client and the site. As for due dates, you'll need to submit your basic info and draft by the end of the first week. Start with the basics like who your client is and why you picked them. Also, who the target audience is for that client and what you're trying to get them to do. As for the draft itself, of course the site doesn't have to be completely done for the draft, but you should have some pretty significant progress to show. Follow the directions linked in the module on how to submit your site. Try to get at least the basic layout of what the site is going to look like, the master layout. Then I'd like you to comment on at least 3 other drafts. What sort of content and experience would you expect from a site such as theirs? And how does their draft look so far? If you were the client, what feedback would you give them? What would you like? Maybe what might need some work. Help them to refine their project. Then you will go back and finish up your own project, and you'll submit your final completed project to Blackboard along with your development thoughts and or questions by the end of the 2nd week. Tell us about the experience and how it all went. Then comment on at least 3 other finished projects. Tell your classmates what you think of their final version. Post some helpful, insightful, or constructively critical comments to help them to know how they did. What's the weakest point of their site that might need some attention if they were to present this to a real client? Or what is your favorite part that really hit the mark? Give them some useful feedback. So that's this module in a nutshell. I know it might seem like a lot of work, and it will be, but I hope you'll be excited too about what you'll be doing and what you're going to create. So good luck, and as always, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to contact me. Take care.